I Say a Little Prayer for You. That's the Aretha Franklin classic that became the anthem for Julia Roberts' 1997 rom-com about a woman who realizes she's in love with her best friend the second he announces he's marrying someone else. My Best Friend's Wedding gave us Julia at peak charm, Cameron Diaz as the impossibly sweet rival, and Rupert Everett stealing every scene as the world's best gay best friend. The film made $299 million worldwide, launched Cameron Diaz into romantic comedy stardom, and proved America would actually root for Julia Roberts even when she was playing the villain. But behind those pastel bridesmaid dresses and karaoke renditions of I Just Don't Know What to Do with Myself, this production was a circus of test audience revolts, rotting seafood, and one actor whose career-defining role accidentally destroyed his career. Today we're diving into 15 weird facts about the movie that invented the modern rom-com twist ending. Now, before we get started, be sure to like and subscribe because it really does help this channel. Number 15. Test audiences wanted Julia Roberts dead. When director P.J. Hogan first screened My Best Friend's Wedding for test audiences in 1997, he thought he'd nailed it. The ending had Julianne meeting a handsome stranger at the wedding reception, played by John Corbett, with the implication that she'd found new love despite losing Michael. Classic rom-com formula. America's sweetheart gets a happy ending, except test audiences absolutely hated it. And we're not talking mild disappointment. According to Hogan, they wanted her dead. They just couldn't understand her motives. A studio executive called him the next day and asked, "How are you going to save this movie?" The problem was simple. Audiences had just watched Julia Roberts lie, manipulate, and sabotage a wedding for 90 minutes. They weren't ready to reward that behavior with a cute meet cute. The irony is perfect. Julia Roberts, who'd built her entire career on being likable, had finally played a character so convincingly selfish that viewers wanted to punish her. The studio panicked. They'd just spent $38 million on a Julia Roberts vehicle, and focus groups were essentially demanding her character suffer. So, Hogan went back 8 months later, rewrote the ending, and turned the whole film into something Hollywood had never really seen before. A romantic comedy where the protagonist loses. And that failure made the movie a classic. Number 14. Cameron Diaz thought she'd be lip-syncing, then the director ambushed her. That excruciating karaoke scene where Cameron Diaz sings, "I Just Don't Know What to Do with Myself," isn't acting. That's genuine terror you're watching. According to the film's music supervisor Bonnie Greenberg, Diaz spent weeks practicing her lip-syncing, fully expecting to fake it on camera. Then director P.J. Hogan pulled the rug out. He told her she'd be singing live in front of a real crowd of extras. No playback, no safety net. Just Cameron Diaz, a microphone, and several dozen strangers watching her bomb. Diaz later told Entertainment Weekly, "I was terrified to do that scene, for real. She spent the entire scene staring at him because, as she put it, he's looking at me like, 'You're okay, you're not gonna die.' And I was like, 'But I'm dying.'" Hogan knew exactly what he was doing. The worse Diaz got, the better the scene worked. Her voice cracked. She missed notes. The extras didn't know whether to laugh or applaud. And then something magical happened. The applause became real. They started cheering for her, not because she was good, but because she was so committed to being terrible. The scene only works because Diaz's fear is visible. If she'd lip-synced, Kimmy would have looked confident. Instead, she looks vulnerable, brave, and completely in love with Michael, despite humiliating herself. All because the director lied to her for weeks. Number 13. The iconic musical number wasn't in the script. The I Say a Little Prayer scene, the one moment everyone remembers from My Best Friend's Wedding, was never supposed to exist. Director P.J. Hogan added it himself right before filming started. The original script had the rehearsal dinner, but no singing. Hogan thought the movie needed a big musical moment and just wrote it in. Then he made it everyone's problem. Actress Carrie Preston, who played one of Kimmy's cousins, later revealed the nightmare behind that joyful sing-along. It took 2 full days to film. We're talking 12 to 14-hour days for one scene. And because it's set at a seafood restaurant, the entire cast and crew spent those 2 days surrounded by real lobsters and crabs, under hot film lights, for 28 hours. Preston told Cinema Blend, "You can only imagine what it smelled like at the end of day 2. By the second day, the shellfish that wasn't being actively eaten had started to turn. The smell was overwhelming, but everyone kept smiling, kept singing, kept pretending this was a delightful family brunch, and not a slow-motion descent into seafood hell. The extras, the cast, everyone just powered through while rotting crustaceans baked under 1,000-watt lights. And the result? One of the most iconic scenes in rom-com history. Rupert Everett leads a restaurant full of people in a Dionne Warwick classic, while Julia Roberts watches in horror. Worth it? The audience says yes. The crew's noses probably disagree. The real question is whether anyone involved can still eat lobster, or if they're permanently traumatized. My guess is Carrie Preston hasn't touched a crab leg since 1996. Number 12, Rupert Everett's role went from 2 lines to saving the entire movie. When Rupert Everett was first offered the role of George, the character had exactly 2 lines in the script. 2. Everett later admitted he thought accepting the part was career-ending. He was an established British actor who'd done serious dramatic work, and now he was signing on to be a glorified cameo in a Julia Roberts rom-com. But something happened during filming. The chemistry between Everett and Roberts was instant. Director P.J. Hogan realized George wasn't just a side character. He was the emotional center of the entire film. So when test audiences destroyed the original ending and demanded more George, Hogan had his answer. 8 months after filming wrapped, they brought Everett and Roberts back for massive reshoots. Every scene where George calls Julianne out on her behavior, added in reshoots. The iconic final dance, added in reshoots. That crucial phone call where George asks, "Who's chasing you?" and Julianne realizes nobody is, added in reshoots. Hogan expanded George from a throwaway part into Julianne's conscience, her reality check, and ultimately the person who saves her from herself. The movie only works because George exists, and Everett went from 2 lines to a Golden Globe nomination. But here's the twist. That role, the one that saved the movie and made Everett famous in America, also typecasted him so hard it nearly ended his film career. 3 years later, he played Madonna's gay best friend in The Next Best Thing, which bombed spectacularly. Everett later said he regretted coming out publicly, believing if he'd stayed closeted, he could have had a career like Colin Firth or Hugh Grant. Instead, Hollywood saw him as the gay best friend and nothing else. The role that should have launched him instead trapped him. Number 11. Julia Roberts had to wear a wig because she cut her hair between filming and reshoots. When filming wrapped in September 1996, Julia Roberts thought she was done. The movie was finished. She could move on. So she did what any person would do after 3 months of work. She cut her hair, chopped off those famous long curls, and went for a short pixie cut. Then the test screenings happened. Audiences wanted her dead. The ending didn't work. And suddenly, 8 months later, Roberts got a call. They needed her back in Chicago to reshoot the entire final act. There was just one problem. Her character had long, curly hair. Roberts now had a pixie cut. The solution? A wig. If you watch the final scenes carefully, you can spot it. Roberts is wearing a long, curly wig to match her earlier footage, and it's just slightly off. The texture's different. The movement's not quite right. She's dancing with Rupert Everett at the wedding reception in a costume wig, pretending she still has the hair she cut off months ago. The bathroom confrontation scene with Cameron Diaz? Wig. The chase through Union Station? Wig. That final phone call with George where she realizes she's been chasing the wrong thing? Julia Roberts in a wig, 8 months after she thought this movie was finished. Fixing an ending that test audiences hated so much, the studio nearly shelved the film. And somehow, it all worked. The reshoot saved the movie. The wig is barely noticeable unless you're looking for it. And Roberts went on to make another $299 million rom-com, where she definitely didn't have to worry about her hair, because Notting Hill came out 2 years later, and her hair was short by choice. Still, imagine being told your rom-com needs emergency surgery, and your first thought is, oh no, I have to wear a wig for this. Number 10. The boat scene turned into a popularity contest. There's a scene where Julianne and Michael take a romantic boat ride down the Chicago River, sailing under bridges while they talk about their past. Sweet, intimate, perfect rom-com moment. Except, filming it required going up and down that river 8 times in one day, passing under the same bridges over and over while crowds gathered to watch. And every single time they went under a bridge, someone would lean over and yell, "Julia!" Because of course they did. She was one of the biggest movie stars in the world. Dermot Mulroney later told Entertainment Weekly, the whole thing became a running joke. Take after take, bridge after bridge, someone would scream for Julia Roberts. Mulroney would just sit there, the leading man, completely invisible. Then, on about the 8th trip down the river, someone finally yelled, "Hey Dermot!" Mulroney looked up, thrilled. Finally recognition, validation, proof that he mattered. Then he realized who it was. A friend from college, standing on the bridge, yelling his name. It didn't count. Mulroney laughed about it in the interview, but you can hear the pain underneath. He spent an entire day on a boat with Julia Roberts, literally the leading man in a major romantic comedy. And the only person who recognized him was someone who already knew him. The rest of Chicago only had eyes for Julia. And honestly, that's kind of perfect for the movie's theme. Michael spends the whole film torn between two women, convinced he's the center of the story, when really he's just the guy everyone's fighting over. Mulroney spent the whole boat scene thinking he was a co-star, when really he was a prop in the Julia Roberts show. Number 9, Paul Simon rejected the Helium Kids scene because he protects his music like a hawk. In the original script, there's a scene where a bunch of kids suck helium and sing to entertain the wedding party. It's absurd. It's hilarious. And director P.J. Hogan knew it would be one of the funniest moments in the film. The song he wanted? Bridge Over Troubled Water by Simon and Garfunkel. Perfect choice. Iconic, emotional, completely ridiculous when performed on helium by children. There was just one problem. Paul Simon said absolutely not. According to Hogan, Simon wanted to see the screenplay first because he protects his music like a hawk protecting her eggs. So Hogan sent it over, hoping Simon would see the humor and give his blessing. Simon read it and came back with a hard no. His reasoning? You cannot sing Bridge Over Troubled Water on helium respectfully. And he was right. The whole point of the scene was to make a beautiful, meaningful song sound completely absurd. Simon wasn't about to let his masterpiece become a punchline in a Julia Roberts rom-com. So Hogan had to pivot. He switched to Annie's Song by John Denver, got approval, and the scene stayed in the movie. The kids still sucked helium. The song still sounded ridiculous. And honestly, it worked just as well. But somewhere, Paul Simon is probably still protecting Bridge Over Troubled Water from any director who thinks helium would make it funnier. The man has boundaries. You have to respect that. Although part of me wishes we lived in the alternate universe where he said yes, just to see how truly unhinged that scene could have been. Number 8. A reggae cover nobody asked for became a Billboard hit 30 years after the original. The movie's soundtrack featured a cover of I Say a Little Prayer by Jamaican singer Diana King, done in a reggae style that nobody saw coming. The song had been a hit twice before. Dionne Warwick's original in 1967. Then Aretha Franklin's version a year later. By 1997, it was a classic, untouchable. Definitely not something you'd think to reggae-fy for a romantic comedy. But Diana King did it anyway, and the movie featured it heavily. The cover hit number 38 on the Billboard Hot 100. Not bad for a reggae reinterpretation of a 30-year-old Burt Bacharach song in a rom-com about wedding sabotage. It also hit number 8 on the Hot Dance Club Play chart, which makes sense because the Love to Infinity remix was everywhere in 1997. The real irony? The song that plays during Rupert Everett's big restaurant musical number isn't Diana King's version. The cast sings it live, doing their own rendition that sounds nothing like King's reggae take. So, the movie made Diana King's cover a hit, but the actual scene people remember doesn't use that version at all. King's cover helped the My Best Friend's Wedding soundtrack reach number 1 in Australia and sold millions worldwide. It brought I Say a Little Prayer back to relevance 3 decades after Dionne Warwick first recorded it. And all because a rom-com needed a song for a scene that wasn't even in the original script. Sometimes the least expected choice is the one that works. Also, if you're Burt Bacharach, you're probably just thrilled people keep finding new ways to make money off a song you wrote in the 1960s. Royalties are royalties. Even if they're coming from a Jamaican reggae artist, covering your work for a movie about Julia Roberts ruining a wedding. Number 7. Sarah Jessica Parker turned down the lead role to play Carrie Bradshaw instead. Before Julia Roberts ever read the script, the role of Julianne Potter was offered to Sarah Jessica Parker. This was 1996. Parker was a working actress with a solid career, but wasn't yet a household name. My Best Friend's Wedding would have been her big break, her entry into rom-com royalty, her chance to be a leading lady in a major studio film. She turned it down. Why? Because she'd just committed to a little HBO show called Sex and the City. At the time, that seemed like a risky move. Trading a guaranteed Julia Roberts-level rom-com for a cable series about dating in New York? HBO wasn't the prestige network it is now. Sex and the City was a gamble. But Parker took it, and that decision changed everything. Sex and the City premiered in 1998, 1 year after My Best Friend's Wedding hit theaters. It ran for 6 seasons, won Parker 4 Golden Globe Awards, turned Carrie Bradshaw into a cultural icon, and made Sarah Jessica Parker one of the most famous actresses in the world. Meanwhile, My Best Friend's Wedding made $299 million and revitalized Julia Roberts' career. So really, everyone won. Parker got Carrie Bradshaw, Roberts got Julianne Potter, and we got to live in a world where both performances exist. But imagine the alternate timeline. Sarah Jessica Parker plays a food critic sabotaging her best friend's wedding. Carrie Bradshaw energy in 1997, before Carrie Bradshaw existed. Would it have worked? Maybe. Would it have been the same movie? Definitely not. Roberts brought a specific kind of manic desperation to Julianne that Parker might have played differently. We'll never know. What we do know is that Parker chose a TV show about cosmopolitans and Manolos over a rom-com about wedding sabotage, and both choices turned into massive cultural moments. Sometimes the role you don't take is just as important as the one you do. Number 6. Julia Roberts was paid $12.5 million, tying a record with Demi Moore. When Julia Roberts signed on to My Best Friend's Wedding, she was paid $12.5 million. That number tied the record for the highest salary ever paid to a woman for a single film, a record she shared with Demi Moore. This was 1996. The fact that it was newsworthy that 2 women had finally broken into 8-figure salaries tells you everything about how Hollywood worked back then. Men had been making $20 million per movie for years. Women were fighting to crack $10 million. Roberts and Moore got there at the same time, and the press made a big deal out of it. Look, women can make real money now. Isn't that progress? The irony is that Roberts would go on to shatter that ceiling just a few years later. By the time Erin Brockovich came out in 2000, she was making $20 million per film, the same as her male counterparts. She became the highest paid actress in Hollywood and stayed there for years. But in 1997, $12.5 million was the peak, the absolute most a woman could negotiate. And Roberts took that money, made a movie about a woman who doesn't get what she wants, and turned it into a $299 million global hit. The math is pretty simple. The studio paid her $12.5 million. The movie made nearly $300 million worldwide. That's a 24-to-1 return on investment. And yet, at the time, paying a woman that much was considered a risk. Hollywood has always been slow to figure out what's obvious to everyone else. Julia Roberts was worth every penny. The fact that it was treated as groundbreaking is the real story. She wasn't overpaid. Everyone else was underpaid. Still are, honestly. Number 5. The bathroom confrontation scene was completely reshot because the original was too nice. In the original cut of the film, there's a crucial scene where Kimmy confronts Julianne in the bathroom after discovering she's been sabotaging the wedding. It's the moment where everything comes to a head. Kimmy knows. Julianne's caught. The friendship is over. In the first version, that scene didn't work at all. According to director P.J. Hogan, Kimmy forgave Julianne almost immediately. She was sweet, understanding, and ready to move past it. The problem? Test audiences hated it. They didn't want Kimmy to be a pushover. They wanted her to fight back. So Hogan rewrote the entire scene and reshot it 8 months later. The new version is brutal. Kimmy doesn't just call Julianne out, she eviscerates her. "I trusted you," Kimmy screams. The sweetness is gone. The forgiveness is gone. What's left is a young woman who finally realizes she's been manipulated by someone she thought was her friend. It's one of the best scenes in the movie because Cameron Diaz doesn't play Kimmy as a victim. She plays her as angry, betrayed, and strong enough to demand the truth. That scene only exists because test audiences refused to let Julianne off the hook. They wanted consequences. They wanted Kimmy to have a spine. And Hogan listened. The reshoot turned Kimmy from a doormat into a character worth rooting for. It also made Julianne's redemption arc actually mean something. You can't earn forgiveness if you were never really confronted in the first place. Number 4. Screenwriter Ron Bass deliberately made the smartest person in the movie gay. In 1997, gay characters in mainstream Hollywood movies were punchlines, villains, or tragic figures. They weren't the hero. They definitely weren't the smartest, wisest, most emotionally intelligent person in the film. Screenwriter Ron Bass wanted to change that. According to Bass, on top of Julianne losing the guy, I wanted to write something where the smartest, best, wisest, most terrific person in the movie was gay. There wasn't anything like that in those days. This was the first time that ever really happened. George isn't a stereotype. He's not defined by being gay. He's defined by being the only person in the movie who actually has his life together. He's successful, confident, emotionally available, and the only one who consistently calls Julianne out on her nonsense. He's also the person she turns to when everything falls apart. Not because he's her gay best friend, but because he's her best friend, period. The fact that he's gay is just part of who he is. Bass wrote that role deliberately, knowing it would be groundbreaking, and it was. Rupert Everett's performance earned him a Golden Globe nomination and turned George into one of the most beloved characters in rom-com history. The downside? Hollywood immediately typecasted Everett. Instead of seeing him as a great actor, they saw him as the gay best friend and offered him the same role over and over. Everett has said in interviews that he regrets coming out, believing it limited his career in ways that straight actors never had to deal with. But for one movie, for one character, George Downes was exactly what Ron Bass intended, the best person in the room, not despite being gay, but because he was written as a fully realized human being who happened to be gay. That shouldn't have been revolutionary in 1997, but it was, and 28 years later, we're still not where we should be. At least Bass tried. And for a few minutes, George dancing with Julianne at the end of that movie felt like the most honest, joyful, perfect ending a rom-com had ever had. Number 3, the movie opened at number 2 behind Batman and Robin, then outlasted it completely. When My Best Friend's Wedding premiered in June 1997, it opened at number 2 at the box office with $21.6 million. Not bad for a romantic comedy. The movie that beat it, Batman and Robin, the Joel Schumacher disaster starring George Clooney, which opened at number 1 with $42.8 million. At the time, that seemed like a clear winner. Batman and Robin had twice the opening weekend. Huge stars, massive budget, franchise power. My Best Friend's Wedding was just a Julia Roberts rom-com about wedding sabotage. Fast forward a few weeks, and the story flipped. Batman and Robin collapsed. Word of mouth was toxic. Critics destroyed it. Audiences hated it. It quickly became one of the most reviled superhero movies ever made, and its box office dropped off a cliff. Meanwhile, My Best Friend's Wedding kept going. It stayed in the top 10 for 6 consecutive weeks. It made $127 million domestically and $299 million worldwide on a $38 million budget. Batman and Robin had a much bigger budget and ultimately underperformed, which sounds good until you realize Warner Brothers considered it a financial disappointment after marketing costs. My Best Friend's Wedding was a cultural phenomenon. The irony is perfect. The big-budget superhero spectacle with rubber nipples on the bat suit got obliterated by a rom-com about a woman who doesn't get the guy. Hollywood thought audiences wanted explosions and Arnold Schwarzenegger making ice puns. Turns out they wanted Julia Roberts, Cameron Diaz, and Rupert Everett singing Dionne Warwick songs while eating lobster. Box office is a funny thing. You can have all the money, all the stars, all the IP in the world, and still lose to a movie that cost a fraction of your budget, because it actually understood what people wanted to see. My Best Friend's Wedding knew exactly what it was. Number 2, Cameron Diaz's first romantic comedy launched her into a career of rom-coms she'd dominate for a decade. When Cameron Diaz was cast as Kimmy Wallace, she'd only done 2 major films. The Mask in 1994, where she played a nightclub singer opposite Jim Carrey's manic performance, and A Life Less Ordinary, a quirky indie that nobody saw. She had zero romantic comedy experience, zero experience playing sweet and vulnerable. Director P.J. Hogan cast her anyway, specifically because she wasn't a rom-com actress. He told her to play Kimmy as a dramatic role that happened to be in a comedy. Don't go for laughs, just be real. Diaz committed completely. She made Kimmy so genuinely kind, so earnest, so in love with Michael, that audiences couldn't root against her, even though the entire movie was designed to make you side with Julia Roberts. That performance launched Diaz into rom-com royalty. The very next year, she starred in There's Something About Mary, which made her a massive star and one of the biggest box office draws in Hollywood. Then came The Holiday, What Happens in Vegas, and a string of romantic comedies that defined the late 90s and early 2000s. By 2013, she was named the highest-paid actress over 40 in Hollywood, all because she took a role as the sweet bride-to-be in a movie where she was supposed to be the obstacle, not the hero, and turned Kimmy Wallace into someone you genuinely cared about. The fact that this was her first rom-com makes it even more impressive. She had no template, no prior experience playing this kind of character. She just showed up, trusted the director, let herself be terrified during the karaoke scene, and created a performance so warm and real that it changed her entire career trajectory. Number 1, Rupert Everett thought the role was career-ending. Then it destroyed his career anyway. When Rupert Everett was first offered the role of George, the character had 2 lines in the entire script. Everett, an acclaimed British actor with serious dramatic credentials, thought taking the part would be career-ending. A glorified cameo playing a gay best friend, that's the kind of role that traps you. But he took it anyway. And something unexpected happened. The role expanded. Test audiences demanded more of him. Reshoots gave him major scenes. When the movie came out, Everett stole the entire thing. He got a Golden Globe nomination. George became iconic. For a brief moment, the gamble paid off. Then, the typecasting started. 3 years later, he played Madonna's gay best friend in The Next Best Thing, which bombed and helped derail his film career. Hollywood saw Everett as the gay best friend and nothing else. Same role, over and over. Never the lead, never the romantic interest, always the wise sidekick. In interviews years later, Everett admitted he regretted coming out publicly. He told The Guardian in 2009 that if he'd been straight, he believed he would have had a career like Colin Firth or Hugh Grant. Instead, he was relegated to the sidelines, just like George. The character he helped create became the character he couldn't escape. The role that should have made him a star instead typecast him so completely it limited everything after. He saved My Best Friend's Wedding. He made George one of the most beloved characters in rom-com history, and Hollywood repaid him by deciding that's all he could ever be. Sometimes the thing that makes you famous is the thing that traps you. And there you have it. 15 weird facts about the rom-com that proved losing can be more satisfying than winning. Which facts surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments below. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more nostalgic movie deep dives. And until next time, say a little prayer that you never have to choose between your best friend and your integrity.